The rise of Jackson 5 at Motown looked like a dream, but behind the fame was a secret. After years of silence, the truth has finally surfaced, and it isn't as good as the music sounded. Join us as we unravel what really went wrong. A cultural revolution. The journey of the Jackson 5 from small shows in their hometown to becoming one of Motown's brightest acts was a dramatic turning point in their career. What started as family performances soon grew into something much larger, pulling them into the heart of music history. The group began by taking on local gigs, setting up their instruments wherever they could, and working hard to grab attention. Their father, Joe Jackson, pushed them to practice daily, drilling them in vocals, instruments, and stage moves until their act came together. He made them run through songs again and again to iron out mistakes and polish their sound. Those early years of discipline and repetition laid down a strong base, allowing them to rise step by step. As they built up their reputation, the Jackson 5 spread their name, moving from small clubs to bigger stages. Crowds started to gather around, drawn by the energy of the young brothers who performed with a mix of skill and charm. Yet the real break came when Motown stepped in. The connection with Berry Gordy's company changed everything, lifting them from regional popularity to worldwide fame. With Motown behind them, their act became unstoppable. Berry Gordy had already worked out a system that brought success to many other artists. He wanted to create music that reached across barriers and could pull in listeners from every background. Bringing the Jackson 5 into the Motown family fit perfectly with that plan. Their youthful energy and fresh appeal brought new life to the label. Their songs exploded onto the charts, carrying the style of Motown while also standing out with the Jacksons' own spark. Their presence on stage drew in not only young fans but also older listeners, breaking down walls that often separated audiences. Motown gave the group more than just hit songs. It built up their image, making sure they appeared polished, professional, and ready for the spotlight. Gordy knew that music alone was not enough to keep an audience hooked. He wanted acts that could spread into television, magazines, and public appearances. The Jackson 5 fit perfectly into this larger vision. With carefully styled looks and planned performances, they were presented as a group that could connect with everyone. Their reach stretched across racial and cultural lines, making them a shared part of popular culture. The studio process at Motown shaped their sound as well. Every detail was worked out with care, from the rhythm of the drums to the flow of the melodies. Producers and musicians in the studio worked alongside the brothers, adjusting songs until they carried the perfect mix of energy and structure. This attention to rhythm and beat made the songs not only fun to hear, but also easy to dance to. The music moved with a strong pulse that grabbed hold of listeners, keeping them drawn in from start to finish. The Jackson 5 learned how to blend their natural talent with this polished system, creating music that stood out in the pop and R&B scenes of the time. This stage of their career became the groundwork for what followed. Michael Jackson, in particular, carried forward the lessons learned at Motown into his solo career. Janet Jackson, though younger, also rose later on with a style that echoed the discipline and showmanship first sharpened in those early Motown years. Without a structured start, the later waves of the Jackson 5's success might not have reached the same heights. The partnership between them and Motown worked both ways. It gave the young group the launch they needed, while also giving Motown fresh energy that pushed the label even higher. The Jackson 5 helped Motown continue its run of success by attracting new listeners and keeping the sound of the label modern and exciting. The story of this partnership shows how talent and vision can come together and change the course of music history. Looking back, the move to Motown was more than just a step in their career. It was the moment that opened the door to everything that came after. The Jackson 5 grew out of small performances shaped by their father's drive, stepped into a system that gave them global exposure, and used that foundation to influence generations of artists. The music they created at Motown marked that period as the time when a group of young brothers turned their dreams into a lasting impact in the world of music. Unfortunately, their time at Motown soon came to an end. The truth about the fallout. The Jackson 5 had started strong, but as the years moved on, the follow-up songs did not bring the same level of success. By 1973, Joe Jackson was growing impatient with Motown. He felt the label was no longer putting in the same effort to keep his sons at the top of the charts. Wanting to take matters into his own hands, he began to build a nightclub act around his children. The family started out in Las Vegas, where their shows drew attention, and then they carried the act across several other states. This shift helped them stay in the public eye. By the middle of the decade, the group had already sold more than 60 million records. That number was impressive, but the family was learning how little they earned from all that success. The royalty rate was less than 3%, and the brothers began to feel they deserved more. Along with that, they wanted to gain control of their own music, something Motown was not offering. These frustrations pushed them into making a life-changing decision. In 1975, they chose to walk away from the label that had launched them. The announcement came in a carefully staged press conference at the Rainbow Grill. The setting was designed to show order and power. 10 tall black chairs stood behind a long table on a raised platform. Facing them were dozens of similar chairs for the reporters and guests. One by one, 11 members of the Jackson family stepped into the room and climbed onto the platform. Music played in the background while the press settled in. The atmosphere was built up to mark the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. When the family sat down, reporters quickly pushed in with questions. The group explained that they were leaving Motown because they wanted to sell more albums, not just singles. They had watched how Epic worked, and they believed the company could give them the push they needed to reach larger audiences. Joe Jackson made it clear that he wanted the kind of success that came with album sales, not the smaller wins of single hits. The reporters then turned their attention to Michael, already recognized as the star of the group. He explained that he expected stronger promotion at their new label, and he seemed ready for the move. Still, his body language revealed another side. While his father and older brothers sat with confidence, Michael appeared shy and withdrawn, as though he carried a different weight on his shoulders. The questions continued, and reporters asked about the family's relationship with Berry Gordy. Joe Jackson brushed it off, giving little away, and kept the focus on the opportunities ahead. He spoke about CBS, Epic's parent company, as a place where anything could happen. Michael added that the family would now aim for an older crowd, even planning to mix nostalgia into their Las Vegas shows so that older fans could relive moments from their youth. The family avoided any emotional words about leaving Motown. They gave no sense that they felt tied to the label's culture or way of working. When asked if they had tried to change their contract with Motown, they admitted they had, but the offers on the table were too poor to accept. The figures simply did not measure up to the work they were putting in. This led Joe Jackson to find a better deal for his children. He entered negotiations with other companies and settled on Epic Records, which offered a royalty rate of 20%. Compared to what they had before, the new agreement was a massive leap forward. In June 1975, the contract was signed, but there was a change. Jermaine did not join them. He had married Hazel Gordy, Berry Gordy's daughter, and chose to remain at Motown. To fill the gap, Randy Jackson stepped in and became an official member of the group. Even though the family announced their departure in 1975, the contract with Motown still held them until March of the following year. The label sued for breach of contract, but eventually reached a middle ground. The brothers could record with Epic, but they had to give up the name Jackson 5. Motown owned the rights to it. As a result, the group moved forward under a new name, the Jacksons. This marked a turning point. Meanwhile, let's take a look at their journey into history. A family dream. The Jackson family lived in Gary, Indiana, becoming one of the most famous musical families of the rock and soul era. Michael was the youngest of 5 brothers, Jackie, Tito, Jermaine, and Marlon, and from the start, he stood out as the one with the strongest voice and the most natural rhythm. Their father, Joseph Jackson, saw something in his children and pushed them into a path that would change their lives. He had once been a boxer and later worked long shifts as a crane operator in a steel mill. Music was his escape, and he played guitar with a local blues band. In 1949, he married Catherine Screws, a young woman who was already known for her talent on the piano and for her sweet singing voice. She held the children together, even while working part-time at a department store to help keep the household afloat. The family was large, with 9 children squeezed into a 2-bedroom home. The house was so small that one could walk a few steps from the front to the back door. Life there was tough, and every inch of space was maximized. One day, Joseph caught some of his sons plucking away at his guitar. At first, he watched with curiosity, then realized they were picking up chords and finding melodies without much instruction. That moment planted an idea in his mind. He began to shape them into a group, training them every day after school, hoping that music could lift them out of poverty. The rehearsals were long, strict, and often exhausting, but Joseph believed discipline was the key to success. Soon, 5-year-old Michael was pulled into the group as lead singer. His small frame and high energy made him a natural star on stage. But the training came with a heavy cost. Joseph's style of discipline was harsh, and according to family accounts, it often involved physical punishment. He made the children perform in the living room, stopping them after every mistake, pointing out every flaw, and lashing out when he thought they had not given enough effort. Sometimes he used a belt or a switch, leaving the boys fearful of errors. Still, they pushed through hours of practice, learning how to sing in harmony and move as one unit. After months of drilling, the Jackson brothers began to step out into the world. They took on the name the Jackson 5 and started playing on the Chitlin Circuit, a series of clubs and theaters that welcomed black performers. They moved from one small stage to another, often driving long distances to reach venues in Gary and Chicago. The group also appeared at local talent shows and school events, winning crowds with their coordinated dance moves and sharp vocals. Michael, still just a boy, watched everything around him. From backstage, he absorbed the magic of seasoned performers. Those lessons stayed with him and became part of his own style as he grew. Even with their rising skills, the Jacksons struggled to find their break. Motown Records, the label every young act dreamed of joining, seemed out of reach. Jermaine later remembered how singer Gladys Knight noticed them and tried to help. She believed in their potential and sent a demo tape of the group to Motown, but the tape came back with rejection. The brothers refused to give up. In July 1967, they walked into a small recording studio and laid down a track called Big Boy. It was raw, filled with energy, and showed flashes of what they could become. The song was released through Wonderful Records, but the label also turned them away when it came to signing a contract. Once again, the door shut before them, and they had to pick themselves up and keep moving. Through all these early struggles, the Jackson 5 carried on. Every setback forced them to fight harder. Each performance built their confidence and sharpened their act. From the crowded clubs of Gary to the theaters of Chicago, they kept building their name, waiting for the moment when someone would finally take notice. The small 2-bedroom home in Gary had produced a sound that would soon reach the world. And even in those early years, the spark inside Michael Jackson had already begun to burn. The golden era of the Jackson 5. In the late 1967, Joe Jackson moved forward with plans to bring his sons into the music world in a serious way. He signed them to Steeltown Records, a small label created by producer Gordon Keith. Under Keith's direction, the young group went into the studio and recorded their song Big Boy again that same month. Only a few weeks later, in January the following year, the single was officially released. The recording gained enough attention to give them their first push into the wider industry. By March, Keith managed to secure a distribution deal with Atlantic Records. Through this arrangement, Big Boy and another song, We Don't Have to Be Over 21 to Fall in Love, were sent out to a larger market. Big Boy slowly began to move copies and eventually reached about 10,000 copies in sales. Around the same time, Keith also booked the brothers for their very first paid performance at the Apollo Theater, one of the most respected stages in Harlem. They were given the chance to open for Etta James, which put them in front of a real paying audience and helped them build their reputation. Keith continued to work hard for the boys, pushing Big Boy through Atlantic Records while negotiating a possible record deal for them with the same label. But during this process, he learned that Joe Jackson had reached out separately to Motown through his attorney, Richard Aarons, hoping to open another door. In July 1968, the group found themselves performing again, this time opening for Bobby Taylor and the Vancouvers at the Regal Theater. Michael's energy and talent caught Taylor's attention immediately. Taylor believed the group had something special, so he sent them to Detroit. There, he arranged a Motown audition for them, which took place on July 23, 1968, inside Motown's headquarters on Woodward Avenue. At first, Motown's chief Berry Gordy had no interest in them. He had already worked with Stevie Wonder and had promised not to sign any more young acts. But when he saw the tape Taylor put together, he changed his mind and decided to take a closer look at the group. By 1969, Berry Gordy was convinced. He signed the Jackson 5 to Motown, and everything began to change. The group burst onto the scene with bold fashion, big afros, sharp dance routines, and an energy that caught audiences. Almost overnight, they became a sensation. Critics took notice of Michael in particular, pointing out his rare gift for performance. While the Jackson 5 kept producing hit after hit, Michael also stepped out on his own with songs like Ben, which topped the charts, and Rockin' Robin, which climbed to number 2. Through these years, the Jackson 5 helped define a new style of dance music, and their run of hits stretched into 1975. During this period, they also earned 2 Grammy nominations, proving how deeply they had connected with fans worldwide. Years later, in July 1984, the family regrouped for the Victory Tour. This event was highly anticipated, but soon faced many troubles. Jackie suffered a leg injury, ticket distribution turned messy, disagreements broke out between the brothers, and even the promotion team fell apart. Don King, who had first taken charge of the tour's promotion, was eventually dismissed. By December, during the final show at Dodger Stadium, Michael used the moment to announce that he was leaving the group to continue on as a solo artist. Only a month later, in January 1985, Marlon also stepped away to focus on his own career. By the time everything came to an end, the Jackson 5 had already sold more than 100 million records across the globe, a staggering achievement for a family group that started so small. But the story did not completely stop there. In 1987, the Jacksons released a single called "Time Out for the Burglar," which appeared on the soundtrack of the Whoopi Goldberg film Burglar. 2 years later, in 1989, 4 of the brothers, Jackie, Tito, Jermaine, and Randy, came together to record the album 2300 Jackson Street. They promoted it with a short tour, but after that, the group went into a long pause and never made another album together again. Marlon tried a solo project, but eventually decided to step away from music completely. He turned his focus to real estate instead. Randy, too, stepped back from the spotlight after disbanding his group, Randy and the Gypsies, in 1991. From their first small recordings under Gordon Keith to the world tours that drew massive crowds, the Jackson 5's journey moved through countless highs and lows. Each turn in their story showed how determination, family drive, and undeniable talent pushed them into places few others had reached. Their time together left behind a legacy that stretched far beyond the years they performed as a group, shaping not only Michael's solo rise but also the larger history of modern music. But the sad truth is that nothing lasts forever. The strife for unity. In September 2001, nearly 17 years after standing together on stage for the last time, all 6 Jackson brothers returned to perform at Madison Square Garden. The event marked 30 years of Michael's solo career, and it later aired in November, drawing global attention. It was a rare moment where the brothers stood side by side again, showing that even after so many years, the bond of music still pulled them back together. Several years later, in early 2009, the 4 older brothers began to film a reality show that aimed to bring the family back into the spotlight as a group. The series was meant to show their attempt to reunite the band, and it finally came out in December 2009 under the title The Jacksons, A Family Dynasty. However, while the cameras were still rolling, Michael made an announcement that changed the entire picture. He had planned a huge comeback concert in London, scheduled for July 13, 2009. The world waited for his return, but tragedy struck on June 25th of that year, when Michael passed away suddenly. His demise put all family projects on hold, leaving both fans and relatives in shock. Later that year, the surviving Jackson brothers gathered in the studio to add background vocals to one of Michael's older recordings from 1980. The demo, called This Is It, was turned into a finished song and used as the theme for the documentary film Michael Jackson's This Is It. The single did not climb to the main Hot 100 chart, but it still found a place on the Billboard Hot Adult Contemporary Tracks, where it reached number 19. This gave the brothers a small return to the charts after so many years away. By 2010, talk began of a reunion tour that would serve as a tribute to Michael. There were also discussions about creating their first studio album in more than 2 decades. But as time went on, those ideas never came together. The brothers could not move forward with either plan. Instead, in September of that year, Jermaine Jackson put together his own tribute concert for Michael in Las Vegas. The following year, Jackie Jackson stepped out with a solo single released through iTunes, while Jermaine released his first solo album in 21 years. The family, however, could not avoid disputes. In August 2011, disagreements broke out regarding another tribute concert that was meant to honor Michael. Jackie, Tito, and Marlon stood with their mother Catherine and sister La Toya at a press conference in Cardiff to announce the event, which was set to take place at the Millennium Stadium. But only days later, Randy and Jermaine made their opposition clear, pointing out that the timing clashed with the manslaughter trial of Conrad Murray, the doctor connected to Michael's demise. Despite the split, the show went ahead. In October 2011, the Jackson brothers appeared as featured artists on a single by Japanese-American singer I. The track, titled Letter in the Sky, served as a tribute to Michael and became the group's first new single in 22 years. It was also chosen as the theme song for the Michael Jackson tribute, Live in Tokyo concert, which was held on December 13th and 14th, 2011 at the Yoyogi National Stadium in Japan. The song managed to chart modestly in Japan, climbing to number 14 on the Oricon Singles Chart and reaching number 36 on the Billboard Japan Hot 100. Through these years, the Jackson brothers continued to move in and out of projects, often pulled back together by their shared history with Michael, yet also divided at times by disagreements. Their efforts to honor him showed how deeply his presence remained within the family, even as they struggled to find the same unity they once had.